Alexa, and today we're going to be talking about TUMBBAD. So I watched this movie earlier this week, and I have a fair amount to say about it. It's mostly positive, but there's a little bit of negative. Just so you know, this is a non-spoiler review, so even if you have not seen the movie, feel free to stick around because I promise I won't spoil anything for you. This movie came out in 2018 to some really good success. It was the very first Indian film to premiere at the Venice International Film Festival, and it received quite a few awards, and it did really well, and I can understand why, definitely. If you look at the film through like a technical aspect and break it down, which we're going to a bit during this video, it handles it all beautifully. So the film was directed by Rahi Anil Bhav, and this is actually his only feature film right now, so I don't know if he has any plans on a second one. I didn't see anything. I did see that there are talks about a sequel to this movie, which I don't want. I feel like this was a very nice little compact piece of art and it does not need to have a sequel, but it did well, so I understand why they'd maybe want to make a sequel, and I will stay open-minded and see how it turns out. So how I kind of have to view this film in like two different ways, because I view it as like a filmmaker and also an audience member, and I have very different opinions from those two different viewpoints. So as a filmmaker, I mean, if you break it down technically, the cinematography, the way they told the story, the acting, the music, the sets, etc., was all executed exceptionally well. And so therefore, it is a good movie. However, as an audience member, I don't really like these kinds of movies, so I did not really enjoy it from that perspective. It's kind of like, the best word I have to describe it, I don't know, this isn't perfect. I've seen a few movies that kind of fall into this category, and I have yet to find like the perfect words to describe it, but the kind of ones I go with now are called, I call it like weird horror, and I'm just really not a fan of that style of cinema. It's just not one that I enjoy, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, it's just not one for me. The lead actor in the film, Shoham Shah, who plays adult Vinayak, does an absolutely spectacular job, as well as everyone else in the film. I mean, young Vinayak in that first section of it, Dundaraj Prabhakar Jogalakar, who plays him, and he does, and also the other child, Pendarag Mohammed Samad, who's later in the film, they do a phenomenal job. I was very impressed by their performance. Everyone's performance in the film I was very impressed with. And then that paired alongside absolutely gorgeous cinematography done by Pankaj Kumar. There was this really cool like framing shot where they used like a square. I don't want any spoilers, so I don't go into too much. But it was just beautifully framed shot. You had like a foreground, middle ground, background. It was gorgeous. And then there's a shot, a few like close-up shots that were like extreme close-ups that were really cool, like the lighting of a match. It was just super fascinating to watch, as well as a close-up of an eye where you could like see the eye jiggle, and it was very interesting. And then alongside sticking with the more technical aspects, the set was gorgeous. I 100% thought it was a real set for a large portion of the movie. I was like, is this just like a cool building that they found? And then, you know, like they used a village, but no, they actually recreated pretty much everything just for this movie, which is so crazy to me. I love hearing about like sets being built for movies that are so immersive and realistic feeling. I mean, they did a truly spectacular job. And especially because this is a timepiece, you know, it's set in the early 1900s. And so that creates, you know, a more difficult challenge. Kind of have to create a set, because if not, it has might get something modern in the background that ruins the time period that you're trying to set your movie in. And so it makes sense that they created their own set, but it was just so well done. I mean, the villages and the mansion were just gorgeous and exceptionally well done, and just huge props to everyone involved in that. I think the film is split up into 3 chapters. I won't go into too much about what happens in each of them, because again, no spoilers. But the first one I think was the most intense. Like, it had a slow build to it that I thought was really well done, and then it goes a bit into some more like character development, and then there's like the huge ending, you know, chapter 3 is like the climax portion of it, you know, it's the end of the movie, so you know, you all building up to there. The 3 chapter structure that they used in this film I think was really intriguing, especially because the most normal Indian formula is to have the 2 parts. You know, you have part 1, intermission, part 2. That's the most common formula used in most Indian films. So I really enjoyed that they broke it down into 3 chapters instead and utilized that formula. It was also a shorter movie. It was only an hour and 50 minutes, which I think suited the movie well, because while it did feel maybe a little lean at parts, never too bad though, it was definitely not one that they should have stuck around longer. You know, I don't think that they needed to add more to it, because I would have been much more disappointed if they just were, you know, sometimes movies stick around longer than they need to, like they stay on something for too long, etc. And I'm really happy that they chose not to do this, especially with this film, because it allowed it to have a greater impact. They also created some really fascinating lore. There's, as I say at the very beginning of the film, they give like a short little brief description of the lore that's utilized in the movie. And it's this fallen deity named Hastur that they've created, and I love how they incorporate the story of him to make it something that could be real, but you know, we all know it's not, but they do it in such a way that makes it more fascinating, because technically it could be, you know, and so it creates a cool effect that I am a big fan of whenever I see that in a movie. They take something and they make it so, hey, so this isn't in your history books, but it could be true because of this. Like, and I think that that is truly, really fascinating. And I really enjoy whenever a movie can do that. Also, the whole thing has really great, like, there's some visual effects throughout it. There's obviously a few things that just aren't 100% real, and I think that they're done extremely well. Some of it's a bit disturbing, but in a good way, because that matches the tone of the film. From like a filmmaker technical speaking, I really do not have any faults with this movie, besides maybe it was a little too lean at times, but that's being super nitpicky, me saying that. However, as I said at the beginning of it, I also just did not enjoy the movie very much. I am not a big fan of this style of film, and therefore it's not one that I would always recommend to people. I think it depends on the person. If you like these kinds of movies, then you're gonna like this film. But if you don't like those kind of movies, then you're not. So it's really the kind of film you have to watch yourself, or at least watch one kind of similar. I'm trying to think of an example. The only one that's coming to mind is a Hollywood film, Hereditary, which if you liked this movie, I'd recommend watching that. They have a similar sort of vibe to them. But they're very different stories, just like the overall vibe. I can't think of a better word right now. It's very similar between the two. And I wasn't a fan of Hereditary either, despite the fact that I have a huge appreciation for it as a filmmaker. I think that definitely the biggest thing this film had going for it was a beautiful aesthetic with the cinematography paired with the amazing acting. I think that those were, while it has a lot of strong aspects in it, I think those are the two that made it the most entertaining to watch. As I started talking a little bit earlier, the acting was truly amazing to watch. Everyone gave amazing expressions, and the children had moments where they were like scared, you know, because this is of course more of a horror. And they just nailed it, and they actually like gave faces of terror, and especially from a child actor, I found that extremely impressive, the way that they were able to fully give those emotions. I mean, it's also impressive from the adult actors as well, but I always, you know, it's just slightly more impressive from children actors. I don't know, it always is for me at least. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And then I mean, I could go on and on about the cinematography in this movie. I won't, I'll spare you all, but I think that it was just truly, the whole thing was shot very beautifully, and every shot was very purposeful and had great movement to it, and yeah, it showed exactly what you need to see, and in a really visually pleasing way. This is also the kind of movie that I could see doing well internationally. I mean, it definitely has a vibe of many like more indie Hollywood films that I've seen in the past few years, especially like A24 is a big distribution company for like kind of indier films, and I could 100% see this movie being on their roster, and they do quite well. They have a whole like niche audience that really love their content, and I think that this movie would fit perfectly in with them. While the movie has been out for 2 years, I feel like even if it were to get picked up by like a company like A24 now, that it could still have a fairly successful run in America and many other countries. I mean, it was at the Venice International Film Festival, and it's been to many, many film festivals, so it's done well. And it has shown in the US. There was at like the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival and a few other ones, and multiple places around the world. And so it definitely did get some success there through the festivals, but I wish maybe it had have gotten a little bit more like distribution wise, like in theaters. I think that TUMBBAD was played in like a few theaters throughout the US, but I wish it had have gotten a more like national presence to it, because I really do think this film could have done really well. I know this film faced a lot of troubles in their process. I read a little bit about it because I always like to before making these reviews and after watching movies in general, and so I know they faced a lot of hardships throughout their process of making the movie, so it ended up taking quite a few years, but honestly this final project was absolutely just stunning to watch, and I think that everyone involved should be extremely proud of themselves, because they made a truly well-made film that even though I don't enjoy the movie, I can have a large amount of appreciation and respect for. Alright, final thing, we have to do the shark meter. So this one I had a bit of a hard time with because I have such conflicting opinions from like two different aspects of watching it. Because as a filmmaker, I'm like, this is phenomenal, but as an audience member, I'm like, eh. So it was a bit hard to place it because I always try and be a bit subjective as well as objective when placing it, because I can be objective, it's my rating system. So I try and mix the two of them whenever I go to place them on the list of movies, but I think for this one I'm going to have to go with Tiger Shark. My subjective viewpoints on it won out a bit against my objective ones. Every aspect of this film was handled so purposefully, and you could see the amount of care and effort going into every single shot and moment, that it was just, it turned out a really amazing film that even though I didn't enjoy it, it is, I mean, I just have a huge respect and appreciation for it because what they were able to accomplish, and therefore it's in Tiger Shark. Let me know in the comments down below what shark rating you would give it, and also all of your thoughts on the movie. Make sure if you give any spoilers to write a spoiler warning on top so we don't ruin the movie for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Alrighty, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day and stay safe out there. Bye!